So those of you who have read my book, Creating High Performers, know that it details how it is to determine what the barriers are to employees reaching their full potential, and then defining what steps you and the employee need to take to get there. In this video, I want to lay out another tool to help you understand what's going on with your employee and the steps to get them to not only being productive, but being of high morale. And I call this tool the production cycle. And it consists of 3 phases. It actually begins with the ending. That is to say, no production, no result occurs unless you have a clear picture of a result that you want to create. Without that picture, you don't start any activity to produce a result. And probably all of us know someone who at some point in their life have been in that condition. They're just very apathetic, don't really want to get out of bed in the morning and don't want to produce a result. And they're not very happy. So these are people that don't have a picture in mind of something that they want to create. So what do I mean by starting with the end in mind? If I want to get to work on time, I have to have the picture in my mind of being at work on time. If I want to graduate from college, I have to have the picture of what it would be like to get that degree standing on the stage. And without that picture of the end result that I want, no production begins. Once I have that picture in place, I'm ready to go back to the beginning of the cycle, a portion of the cycle, a phase I call start. And start consists of having the willingness and the ability to do what it takes to get the result. So if I want to be at work on time, I have to be willing and able to set the alarm, awake when it gets up, and do what it takes to get prepared to be to work. If I want to get to that college degree, I have to be willing to attend the 8 a.m. classes, do the readings, complete the tests, and go to class. So willingness and ability starts me on the road to that end result. And the middle phase I call change, because nothing will happen unless I change the state I'm in now to the state that I want to be in order to produce the result. So change is actually the work or effort associated with completing the production. So I begin with the end in mind. We call that stop, when I acknowledge that I've achieved the end result. Start, which is having the willingness and ability to execute what's needed, and then change, which is actually the execution. Each of you is probably good at one or more of those phases of the production cycle, and probably not so good at one or more of the phases. And the same is true of your employees. So let me offer some examples. I once had a partner who literally had a new business idea every day he came to work, each of which was brilliant, creative, innovative, entrepreneurial. The problem is I could never get him to execute on any of those ideas. And without the execution, no revenue took place. So he was great at starting, not so good at executing or ending a cycle. I also had, at one point, an office manager who loved playing a game called You Could Never Overwhelm Me. And the game was you could throw as many cycles or tasks at him as possible, and he would complete them all by 5 o'clock. And the challenge was he dared us to give us more than he could actually execute. We never won the game. He always ended at 5 o'clock with a clean desk and everything completed, and it took 3 employees to replace him. He was just exceptional at being efficient. Maybe not so good at deciding what tasks were needing or self-directing to decide what needed to be done, but he was great at changing and he was good at stopping. He knew when something was sufficiently complete. And then I had an employee at one point and a good friend in my life that was good at starting, pretty good at changing or executing, but literally could never stop. What I mean by that is that he wrote and tore up 7 doctoral theses, each of them over 150 pages. Never submitted one, never got his doctoral degree. And in order to get production out of him, I would literally have to go to his desk and draft documents off his desk to declare them completed and get them into production. So these are examples of people that are good at one or more portion of the cycle. So if the journey for you as a people manager is to get your employee to full potential, then it's important that you understand which of these phases your employee is good at and assisting them in strengthening the areas where they're not so effective. So let's examine what are some of the barriers that exist at each one of these phases. Remember, we begin with the end in mind, so we begin with literally stop. Well, what are the barriers to being effective at stop? One of them is apathy and previous losses. And this is a lot of what troubles what we call in the book the won't do employee. This is somebody that has had so many previous failures that they're apathetic about starting anything new. They don't want another loss. So it's hard for them to get started. It's hard for them to create a picture of a result that they want to create. Another barrier is lack of confidence. It's kind of related. They don't really feel that they're going to be able to do it well, so they don't start. Another is lack of clarity, meaning if you've not given them clear direction about what the end result is that you want, this is one of the 7 questions, clarity of expectation and standard, then they won't be able to create that picture and they won't be able to get it in motion. And the last, which is what troubled my friend with the doctoral thesis, is perfectionism, where you can never declare something complete because it could always be better. And those of you who have tried writing a book or publishing articles know that this is something that plagues authors frequently. So those are the barriers to stopping. And if you have somebody that has trouble completing cycles, examine which of those barriers exist for them and help them through it. Now to go back to the beginning of the cycle, what are the barriers to starting? Well, again, it can be apathy or perfectionism. You literally never start because you don't get the picture in your mind of what it is you want to create. Another is fear of failure, somewhat related, or fear of the unknown. You're trying to create something that you've never created, and you just don't have the confidence to move forward with that. You also may not start because you're not clear what it is you're supposed to produce. And another interesting one is what I call internal politics, where if you're a high producer, meaning you're good at the production cycle, those that are not as good on the production cycle may put pressure on you to not produce because you're making them look bad. So that can actually stop someone from being as productive and starting cycles as they could be. Next, let's examine, and lastly, the barriers to change or doing the work or effort required to close the cycle. So those include poor personal administration. What I mean by that is they don't make good use of their time and they waste time in various ways. One of the ways that time gets wasted is that I jump from one cycle to another. So I half read an email and then go on to something else, and then I come back to that email, and every time I come back to something I've looked at previously, I waste time because I'm having to reorient my mind to where I was when I left off. So if you read any of the books on how to be productive, it always says take one cycle at a time and take it to full completion. Another barrier can be lack of clarity about what work or effort is required, not getting cooperation from the people you need to complete the effort, and having an addiction to starting, where you want to create new ideas, you don't want to actually execute on any of the ideas that exist. So this is the problem that my former partner had. So each of these cycles, or phases of the cycle, has barriers, and your job as a people manager is to understand which part of the cycle is somebody not so good at, which barrier is holding them back, and then developing a plan of action for both you and the employee to help them overcome these barriers and get to their full potential.